is the Conservative Colonel Podcast with Harrison Dawes, where one man stands against the rising tide of liberalism. This officer in the battle to preserve our nation is the Conservative Colonel.
Nothing ends here. Our hopes and our journeys continue.
And here's Harrison Dawes.
It would help if I had everything set up, wouldn't it? Welcome back to the Conservative Colonel Podcast. I'm your host, Harrison Dawes, returning for another episode in season 1.5. Real quick, make sure to go check us out on conservativecolonel.com and check us out. So we got a couple cool things there. I edited the website, nothing massive, really, just some small things, but we have a new slogan, if you will, but we'll talk about that in a second. Of course, we go support us on our main platform of Speaker, but we're also on Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon Music and Audible, Cashbox, Deezer, Podcast Addict, Podchaser, Listen Notes, and Good Pods. We are also released every Wednesday, the video format of our show. Of course, right now with season 1.5, kind of the in-between between season 1 and 2, where I'm only uploading the audio version of the show. I guess if you really just want to download it on YouTube and watch it, you can still. We are still trying to fix our Rumble account. We will hopefully have some free time to do that soon and catch up on there. But yeah, no, we have a new slogan, if you will. If you go to the homepage of the Conservative Colonel website, conservativecolonel.com, a real conservative podcast discussing conservative news, protecting our founding fathers' dream. Of course, if you want to short that, a real conservative podcast, of course, taking a jab at all the rhinos out there that I don't see a lot of them podcasting, but there's probably some out there if I really looked hard enough. And there, of course, there are some other real conservative podcasts out there, but that just really came to me during this break, and I went with it. So here we are. To the people that have reached out over email, I do want to announce I'm so sorry that I've not been checking our email. It is tied to my work computer, the Conservative Colonel email, and I have not been checking it because when I'm at work, I've been working, and so I don't have it on my phone. I probably need to put it on my phone, but there's that. So I am reaching out to y'all as we're filming, and this is going to be a weird one because I'm filming 2 episodes since we're doing this on the same day. And the reason I'm doing that is on this episode, we are going to be celebrating the 1-year anniversary of the Conservative Colonel Podcast. And so I thought, talk about the news in one episode, talk about the 1-year anniversary in the other. Don't know how I'm going to release them just yet, but we'll see. This is being filmed on December 10th. So happy birthday to the great state of Mississippi that I am a proud member of. Proud to say I'm a Mississippian. I have that old conservative mindset of state pride, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I couldn't be more proud to be from the great state of Mississippi. Hence why this show doesn't just talk about federal politics, but I also hit it close to home with talking about Mississippi politics. And, of course, the reason I do that is because I love my state. My state should be the most conservative state in the union, but it is not. And that pisses me off. So, yeah, go check us out on conservativecolonel.com. Make sure to leave a 5-star review on your platform of choice, please. That really helps us out. Maybe me and Graves can come up with some T-shirts eventually. But right now I do have logo hoodies for this holiday season. and T-shirts when it warms up, because everybody knows the South. 1 minute it'll be cold, the next minute it'll be hot. I was able to wear a short sleeve shirt today and a hoodie. God bless Mississippi. But getting back to everything, again, we'll be returning with our normal scheduled episodes in January. But until then, wanted to record some more short-based episodes. And not going to lie, I had a guest, a potential guest, to reach out to the show. I did see your email. I'm looking into you. I Googled you. If he's listening and he responds, I'm going to laugh at that. But first off, thank you for your interest. Second, I'm talking with my confidant in this battle, Graves, over the phone. I just sent him a message, so he might take. He has texted back. The joys of recording an episode. But talking to him about it, I'm very picky on my guests. So if I bring you on, I really am interested in what you're going to say. That's not a knock on you that I'm not jumping on it. That's more of a knock on me. I'm very particular about my show. I've only had 2 guests on, or 3 technically, with Graves becoming somewhat of a off and on co-host when he has the time because of his work schedule. So I've only had 2 other people on. One of them, Ryan S. Walters, almost got me canceled because he knows how much I love history. And Chris McDaniel knows this. It's easy to get canceled when you're talking about history these days, sadly. But we're going to be talking today. I'll finally get on topic. You guys don't have to scroll off of the conservative kernel history. And celebrating the 1-year anniversary. Holy crap, I cannot believe I've been doing this for a year. Sad to say, I only produced 34 episodes at the time of this recording in that year. Definitely need to up those numbers. Those are rookie numbers. And I do apologize again for the lack of episodes with my work schedule. Again, this is a project of passion. I don't get paid for this. I don't see myself getting paid for this. If I do, that's great. But this is more me fighting for what I believe in. And we're going to be talking about how and why I've continued to stick with this podcast when maybe others will be like, okay, I don't have time. Or I'm not getting the views I want. I think I've talked about in the past, some episodes do really great. Some of them don't. That's just a fact of life. But this all started because of dead gummit Chris McDaniel. And we'll talk about that. But it all started when, technically it started all the way back in 2021 when I started thinking about how Charlie Kirk, Steven Crowder, heck, even the Daily Wire, they all cover national politics, and that's great. Federal politics needs to be discussed, but I'm a true believer that in states' rights, the states' rights of sovereignty to govern themselves how they see fit, the true conservative ideology that Thomas Jefferson founded. I'm, as I've said, a Jeffersonian conservative. I call Graves a Washington conservative. We are very close in agreement on a lot of things, but we do differ on some things. George Washington, for example, believed in a bit stronger federal government, while Thomas Jefferson didn't. I'm more on that side of the equation. And I believe, and I think George Washington would even believe, and hence why me and Graves are always on the same page, that the federal government's gotten too powerful And that is because we have lost the idea of state sovereignty. And so this all started back in 2021, where I was like, thinking something has to change. There needs to be, and ironically, this started because I got involved in politics for the first time in my life in 2021. And I was like, but what about the politics in Mississippi? At the time, I didn't know how to do my own research. I didn't know how to search up a topic. I didn't know how to research and find stuff out for myself. So I was very dependent on the news. And once I realized how corrupt the news was, I was very reliant on podcasts, because I think podcast has really shown you what true conservative news is supposed to be. All news will have a slant. No one can be impartial. You can try your best, but your viewpoint will show at some point. Hence why the show is not, the Colonel podcast. It's the conservative Colonel podcast, because you're going to know where I stand real quick. But the problem is there was no real voice for conservative movement. And it was very disheartening. And so I rattled this idea. At the time, I was in college, and decided against, at the time in 2021, I think it was only going to cover Mississippi politics. And instead, I decided, while I was at the University of Mississippi, hotty toddy, our new Miss now, sadly, the liberals have taken over. I would focus on spreading conservative values on campus. I didn't know anything about podcast. I do a historical somewhat podcast, but I don't know how to do a traditional podcast. And so I focused more in what I thought I could do. At the time, I was like, I'm not the person. If you know me, I have pronunciation issues. I sometimes have a brain fart and will ramble, like I did at the beginning of this episode. And I'm not articulate like politicians. And I thought that maybe I would be a better background player than trying to play on the field. For a sports metaphor, I love basketball, but I sucked at basketball. So instead of trying to get on the court all the time, I've tried to focus on what I could do to help my teammates. And that's how I fulfilled my commitment to the sport and to the team. And I thought that was what I needed to do with politics. Don't talk about this much, but with my love of history, you don't see me debating it much. Mainly because I even though I'm in my own right a decent historian, I knew more than some of my college professors. I never felt sure of myself in debates. And I was very self-conscious about hurting the things I love, history or the movement, because I'm not able to debate. So I thought about playing in the background. So hence in 2021, instead of going down the podcast route, I got involved in Turning Point USA, the Ole Miss chapter, and somehow ended up as vice president. While doing that, I was doing something I was extremely comfortable with, preserving Ole Miss traditions as president of the Colonel Reb Foundation. Focused on that for a long time. I love my work at the Colonel Reb Foundation. I loved my time at Turning Point. They were better than the college Republicans. And sadly, YAF. I joined YAF and was extremely disappointed in the Ole Miss chapter's, at least, lack of action when it comes to certain things. But then time simply just passed, and in 2022, Jack Fairchilds, a friend of mine, restarted the Right Side Radio program as a podcast, and it was perfect. It was more of a balance than I was going to do something just on Mississippi politics, but Jack, what he did is he balanced Mississippi politics and national politics. And I listened to more and more of those episodes every time. And I love Jack's episodes. I still listen to the Right Side Radio podcast. And if you go look at podcasts and hit Great Conservative Allies on the website, you get Chris McDaniel and Jack Fairchild's show. Chris McDaniel's America with Jack and Chris, and then just Chris with the Right Side Radio. And the reason I love those two. I consider them friends, but we'll get back to them. And what that did, though, was make me realize it was past time to get involved if I wanted to save what our founding fathers wanted America to be for future generations. And the opportunity arose for me to dedicate myself when Senator Chris McDaniel at the time announced his campaign for lieutenant governor of Mississippi. I don't think I've made it a shadow of a doubt that I'm a huge Chris McDaniel supporter. I think he is one of the best conservatives out there. And he has definitely been an inspiration for this show, along with Jack. And Chris had a quote that I saw towards the end of this run. Sadly, Chris didn't get it. Delbert, the Democrat in Mississippi, won out. And that was really what pissed me off into doing this. Simply because, sadly, the Republican Party is not the party of conservatives. And the people in Mississippi were blinded by lies of the rhinos, and Chris didn't win. And Jack just kept fighting, and it inspired me to create this show. And then I stumbled upon this quote from Chris. If I accomplish nothing else in my time in office, I hope I'm successful in helping light a fire for liberty in Mississippi that will burn long after I'm gone. I believe strongly that we can make it happen together. And at least in me, you have lit the fire, Chris, that I will fight for Mississippi for as long as I can. And that's how this show started coming together. And I decided that my next step in the fight for conservatism was going to be in the podcast world. I felt like it was the perfect time to jump into that. I asked Jack for a lot of advice. At the time, I wasn't seeing Chris as much since his campaign was over, and not bothering the man. He's a father and, a husband. And I had Jack's phone number. And so poor Jack got his number blown up. God bless Jack Fairchilds, because I blew the crap out of his phone. And he was there every step of the way. Sadly, I don't have my mic set up that Jack told me to get. But he also showed me Spreaker and how that can be used to get me out on as many platforms as possible. For someone who is very light budgeted, they have a free version that was absolutely wonderful. And of course, I'm using, I don't know if I've said this before, I'm using StreamYard to record episodes because it's part of my work. It's on my company. It's my company's StreamYard account, but I use it for this because I'm part owner. So I simply just asked everybody, and they seemed to be okay with it. But thank goodness for Jack also, because he really did step up, because the original name of this podcast was going to be the Mississippi Dog Podcast, because I'm a Mississippian and I work with British Labrador Retrievers, training them to be duck dogs. But Jack somehow, I don't even remember when I told Jack this, remembered that I used to be Colonel Reb and help out with the Colonel Reb Foundation, and remembered that my nickname in college was the Colonel. I want to be clear, it's not because I served. My father was in the Navy. One of my cousins was in the Marines. I have a very strong respect for our veterans. So I want to make it clear, the Colonel in our name does not come from anything of me serving in the military. It comes from my time as Colonel Reb and president of the Colonel Reb Foundation, hence why our logo looks like a young Colonel Reb. That was completely Jack's idea again. Jack came up with the logo because I had no idea. I told him a bit what I wanted, but it wasn't much to go on. And Jack, again, pulling from my time at the Colonel Reb Foundation, gave me the perfect logo. I will never change our logo because it is just a perfect example of what we are and what I believe in: traditions, history, heritage, politics. I mean, that is a young Colonel Reb, and I love that. And Jack sent me that logo and told me the name, the Conservative Colonel Podcast. And I don't know if I even said this. He also came up with our intro, our theme song, and did all the editing for that. And I don't know if I've ever thanked Jack enough for that and ever told him. You know, I've talked about Chris a lot because I am a big Chris McDaniel fan. I do regret not being able to do more for him in his campaign because of my work schedule and how my job is very demanding because it's related to a family member's medical condition. Or one of my jobs. I work multiple jobs because I'm self-employed. But I really wish I could have stepped up more. But Jack really also helped me feel welcomed, along with a couple other people that I hope to have on the show at some point. And Jack is really the reason this podcast is here. He gave the name, he gave the logo, he gave the intro. He set me on the path to do it. I will stand by the fact that Graves saved the podcast when I was feeling doubt, and Jack was the foundation of this podcast. Him and Chris together just are the reason I'm doing this. And Jack specifically held my hand like I was a child to get this done. So I cannot thank him enough. And on November 14th, 2023, we hit the airwaves, and it has been a ride ever since then. And it has been phenomenal. I think of just the fun I've had doing this and the blessings that God has given me to do this, and I'm just ecstatic. And this is how I'm going to fight to protect real conservative values. I am going to make sure that real conservatism never ends and that it sees the light of day in Mississippi again, and hopefully on the national level. We're in the right step with Trump, but Trump's only got 4 years. And what happens after that? You know, does DeSantis steps up? I also am a big supporter of Ron DeSantis. I just like him. I think he is an emblem for state sovereignty that we desperately needed in the time of Joe Biden's administration and even during Trump's administration. Just how he ran Florida was phenomenal. Or is J.D. Vance going to take up? We don't know. I just know that I hope to see Chris McDaniel's America take off, the Right Side Radio keep going strong. And I say take off like it already hasn't. but I want it to be one of the biggest conservative podcasts in the world or in the country, because Chris is truly the voice of Jeffersonian conservatism along with Jack. I give them both that title equally, because Jack has a dedication to this that it shocks even me. Jack's going to text me and tell me to never talk about him on the show again because I'm being too nice. Jack is a very humble man. Sorry, Jack, but you deserve your flowers too. Jack's like me. He can be a bit hard on himself, jokingly, of course. But y'all two are definitely the voice for me, my generation of conservatives in Mississippi. You know, what we strive to be Jeffersonian wise. And I can't thank y'all enough again. This podcast, I'm going to name it Thanking Jack. No, I'm not. I think he would actually come to Wayne County and beat me up at that point. But it's been just crazy. And from the start of the podcast to when I was feeling a bit down because I wasn't able to record, and I was like, well, for a new podcast to get off the ground, you really need to be consistent for 2 years when it comes to uploading. That way you build up a following, you have a strong fan base, and then you can take a bit of time off every now and then like I usually would do during Christmas instead of doing what I'm doing right now. But, you know, after leaving for a while, and I think I uploaded an episode and it didn't do well. I mean, it probably is one of the worst viewed or worst listened to episodes of the podcast. I was very disheartened, pretty distraught, and I was like, well, I think that's a sign to end it, and I'm gonna give Graves his credit now. Graves came on, and me, him, and one other guy did a couple episodes together. Heck, Graves even came on and hosted an episode with him and Sam, Sam being that other guest that came on beforehand. And that episode we all three did, I think became the most download episode of the Conservative Colonel podcast to date, along with just a lot of the stuff we did post-election and pre, like episode 27, episode 28, episode 30. Those episodes did so great. And it's all because of Graves, because I wasn't promoting them. They were just out there for a bit. And Graves said he showed it to some of his people, and they got talking points. And Graves won a swing state for Trump. No one can convince me otherwise. He didn't. He worked his butt off. He deserves his flowers. That man deserves a medal. And he gave talking points via our show. And that meant so much to me because this has just been a project of love. I am the conservative colonel, but the show wouldn't be here without Graves. And I truly mean that. If you're listening, Graves, this show would just not be here right now if it wasn't for you and what you did. Because all of a sudden I'm not releasing anything and I'm getting high number episodes. I'm like, what in the world is happening? And Graves texted me and was like, hey, you know, let's film an episode. And he got me off my tail. We filmed a couple. And it's just been ever since then. The fire's back. And hopefully it'll never go away again and we can get back on track. And that has kind of been the story of the Conservative Colonel podcast. I think I gave y'all some interesting origin story stuff that has never been heard before. Some of it is probably on the website. Considering I use the website to take notes because I don't have my journal. I'm a journaler. I don't have my journal with me to remember all the dates. So I went back on my website because I have 2 sections that talk about the podcast. Oh, gosh. I forgot about my section. But this has been a blast, guys, and I'll try to stop repeating myself. Y'all have been fantastic. I cannot thank you enough for y'all's support. Please keep sharing these out. Please share this episode out, not as a promotion on me, but so Graves, Jack, Chris all get a chance to know, and for a lot of people to know just how influential these people are in the conservative movement, and how I'm happy to call them all 3 my friends. And heck, with Graves, my partner, we were actually talking before the show, and getting Graves on our social medias for the show, and I expect him to do great things with that. Cannot wait for us to get back to our regularly scheduled program so he can truly shine again. But thank you all for listening. I've rambled a lot longer than I should have. So we're going to kind of go ahead and end the podcast now. Again, 5-star review on your podcatcher of choice. Go check us out on conservativekernel.com. And until next time, God bless America and God bless Mississippi. Happy birthday, Mississippi. And happy 1-year anniversary to the Conservative Colonel Podcast.